Myra was an engineer who lived in the broken edges of an old Earth city. Long ago the city had been full of light and movement, but now it was covered with dust, fallen towers, and the sounds of wind moving through empty streets. Myra often walked through these ruins in search of useful parts and hidden knowledge. She was young but skilled, and her mind worked like the gears she carried in her bag. On one quiet morning, Myra entered a collapsed research station that had once belonged to a forgotten science group. She moved carefully through broken glass and twisted steel. Her lamp cast long shadows over shattered screens and silent machines. Most of the rooms were ruined, yet one chamber remained sealed behind a heavy steel door. It took her 3 hours to unlock the door using wires, magnets, and her patient hands. When the door opened, stale air rushed out, carrying the smell of old paper and machine oil. Inside she found shelves filled with records, half-burned notebooks, and faded screens still carrying faint power. Myra searched slowly, her fingers brushing away dust. She wanted something more than broken memories. At last, she uncovered a sealed container made of silver metal. Within it lay blueprints, rolled tightly and marked with a golden seal. Across the top was written a name she had never heard before, the Golden Bridge. She unrolled the design on the floor, her lamp shining over the strange patterns. The bridge was not made of stone or steel, but of energy lines and shifting light. The notes described a structure that could bend time and open a path beyond human death. Myra frowned, unable to believe what she read. It spoke of a crossing, not into stars or planets, but into another plane. The words suggested a way to reach the afterlife itself. Her heart beat quickly as she read on. The scientists who worked on this project had written of tests with energy waves that reacted to thought. They spoke of voices heard during experiments and glimpses of shining landscapes. Yet their records ended suddenly, as if they had vanished before finishing. Myra's fingers shook as she rolled the paper back. Was this real science or a myth hidden in formulas? When Myra returned to her small workshop near the river ruins, she placed the blueprint on her table. Her mentor Tomasz was waiting for her. Tomasz was older, his hair gray, his hands rough from years of repairing machines. He noticed the look on her face and asked what she had found. Myra showed him the design. Tomasz studied the paper with careful eyes. At first, he smiled at the young engineer's excitement, but soon his expression turned heavy. He tapped the words "the Golden Bridge" and whispered that he had once heard old travelers speak of it. They said many explorers lost their lives chasing the dream of life after death. Some believed it was a cruel trick, a door built by forces that fed on human hope. Others believed it was the greatest truth hidden from humankind. Myra argued that the design was too detailed to be a legend. The calculations, the symbols, and the notes all spoke of real science. If it could be built, humanity might finally learn what waited beyond the end of life. Tomasz warned her that such knowledge came with danger. The settlers who lived nearby had lost many friends and family, and if they believed she had a way to reach them, their desire might consume them. Still, Myra's eyes burned with determination. The ruined world around her gave little hope. Food was scarce, cities were crumbling, and the stars above seemed cold and distant. But this blueprint carried a spark of wonder. If the Golden Bridge was real, then perhaps humanity's story was not yet finished. She stayed awake that night studying every line. The design required rare alloys, strong energy cells, and delicate parts that were almost impossible to find. Yet Myra had spent her life collecting broken machines and saving forgotten tools. She believed she could shape what was needed. As the sky grew pale with dawn, she decided she would build the bridge. Tomasz watched her silently, knowing he could not stop her. He had seen too much loss to believe in miracles, but he also knew Myra's heart. Once she set her mind on something, she would not turn away. He feared where this path would lead, yet deep inside he hoped she might uncover something that the old world had never dared to finish. And so the story of the Golden Bridge began, not with a nation or an army, but with a young engineer holding a faded blueprint in a ruined city. Myra began her work with quiet steps. She knew the settlers around the river ruins watched her with curious eyes. They often saw her carrying pieces of metal, broken coils, and heavy batteries back to her small workshop. Most thought she was repairing another old machine, but Myra's mind was fixed on something far greater. She wanted to bring life to the Golden Bridge, a design that promised to open a path no human had ever walked. Each morning she searched the ruins for parts. She climbed into old towers where machines had rusted in silence for years. She broke open doors of forgotten factories, pulling out circuits that still held a faint spark. Sometimes she found wreckage of fallen ships from the time when humanity had tried to leave Earth. Their engines were twisted, their wings broken, yet inside their cores Myra found alloys stronger than stone. Tomasz often followed her, shaking his head at her risk. He reminded her that the city ruins were dangerous, filled with crumbling floors and silent traps. But Myra's determination never bent. She moved with care, always thinking of the golden light she had seen in the drawings. Back in the workshop, Myra laid out her growing collection. The floor was covered with coils of wire, panels of steel, glass plates, and cells of energy. She studied the blueprint again and again, marking each section with her notes. The bridge would not be a single arch of stone but a living gate built from light. The design required a frame that could channel power without breaking, and an engine that could hold the energy steady. For weeks Myra worked without rest. She welded pieces together until sparks filled the room. She built a frame shaped like a wide arc, tall enough for a person to walk under. Its surface was smooth silver, polished until it reflected the faint light of the workshop lamps. At the center of the arc she placed glass plates that shimmered when energy passed through them. Tomasz helped her even though he still feared the result. He repaired the old energy cells, replacing cracked lines with new ones, and connected wires until the frame began to hum. He told her stories of explorers who once dreamed of finding life on distant planets. None of them had ever returned. Myra listened but kept her hands moving, her eyes fixed on the dream before her. Word of the strange work spread quickly. Settlers passing near the workshop whispered about the glowing frame they had seen inside. Some said Myra was building a machine that could call back the dead. Others believed she was making a weapon. Children watched from the doorways, their eyes wide with wonder. One evening, as the sun sank behind broken towers, Myra stood before the nearly finished frame. The metal gleamed with golden light from the setting sun. She placed her hand on its surface and felt a faint vibration. For the first time she believed the bridge could truly awaken. Tomasz stood beside her, his arms folded. He asked her if she was ready for what might happen. Myra answered with calm words. She said that Earth had lost too much, and people lived with fear of death every day. If the Golden Bridge could give even a single answer, then it was worth the risk. The final piece was the power core. Myra knew she needed something stronger than any cell she had. She remembered the old military base buried under the sands outside the city. Rumor said that within it still lay a crystal engine, a heart of pure energy. Few dared to enter the base because it was unstable, but Myra felt she had no choice. The next morning, she and Tomasz set out together. They crossed broken roads and empty fields until the sand stretched far and wide. The base was half buried, its towers tilted, its gates rusted. Myra pushed forward with steady steps. Inside the halls lay silence, broken only by the sound of sand sliding through cracks. They searched for hours, passing through control rooms and storage bays. At last, deep in the lower chamber, they found it. A crystal engine rested inside a metal cage, its surface glowing with a soft golden light. The air around it was warm, and the sound of humming filled the chamber. Myra reached out carefully, her fingers trembling, and lifted the engine from its cage. It pulsed in her hands like a living heart. Carrying it back to the workshop was difficult, but they managed by sharing the weight. The settlers who saw them return whispered even louder, for the glow of the crystal shone through the cloth that wrapped it. Some bowed their heads, believing Myra had found a gift from beyond. That night, under the dim lamps of the workshop, Myra placed the crystal into the heart of the frame. Wires connected, lights flickered, and the entire structure trembled as if waking from a long sleep. The arc glowed faintly, a pale gold shimmer spreading across its surface. Myra stepped back, her chest rising with both fear and hope. The golden bridge was not yet alive, but it was close. The energy flowed through its frame like blood through veins. Myra looked at Tomasz and whispered that soon, very soon, they would see what waited beyond. Tomasz said nothing, for his eyes were fixed on the growing light, and his heart carried both wonder and dread. The workshop stood silent except for the low hum of the golden frame. The settlers had gathered outside, their faces lit by the faint glow that slipped through the cracks in the walls. Myra and Tomasz stood inside, their tools set aside, their eyes fixed on the bridge they had built. The crystal engine pulsed steadily, sending energy into the frame, which shimmered as if it was made of liquid light. Myra felt her heart racing. Weeks of work, months of searching, and years of quiet dreams had led to this moment. The blueprint was no longer just drawings on paper. The golden bridge stood before her, waiting for the first test. Tomasz placed his hand on her shoulder and asked if she was ready. She nodded, though inside she carried both fear and hope. She chose not to walk through it herself, not yet. Instead, she prepared a small drone she had repaired from the ruins of an old scouting ship. The drone was round, with tiny wings that hummed when powered. She had filled it with sensors to record images, sounds, and energy readings. It would be her eyes and ears beyond the light. Myra carried the drone to the front of the shimmering arc. The settlers pressed against the windows, whispering as they saw the small machine hover in her hands. Tomasz gave her a slow nod, though his jaw was tight with worry. With a steady breath, Myra released the drone. Its wings spun, lifting it into the air. Slowly it drifted forward until its nose touched the surface of the golden light. For a moment nothing happened. Then the drone slipped through the glowing arc as if passing through water. Its body disappeared, leaving only ripples of light behind. The workshop fell silent. Myra rushed to the control board, her hands moving quickly across the keys. Numbers flashed on the screen, and then an image appeared. At first it was blurry, but then it cleared. Myra gasped, and the settlers outside pressed closer to see. The screen showed a wide field stretching beyond sight. The grass glowed with silver light, and rivers of shining water cut across the land. The sky above was calm, filled with warm light that seemed to come from everywhere. In the distance stood figures, human in shape, walking slowly as if waiting. Their faces were unclear, yet their movements were gentle, almost familiar. Whispers rose from the settlers. Some claimed they recognized the shapes. Others pressed their hands to the windows, tears running down their faces. One old woman cried out that she saw her son who had been lost in the last famine. Tomasz stiffened, his face pale. Myra watched in silence, her breath caught in her chest. The drone sent back sound, faint but clear. Voices drifted through the speakers, soft and calling. Myra's name echoed among them, spoken with warmth. She froze, for she knew that voice. It was her brother, who had died years ago when disease swept the ruins. She stumbled back, her eyes wide, her heart aching with both joy and fear. Tomasz gripped her arm and reminded her of the danger. He said that the bridge might not lead to peace but to something that fed on memory and longing. Yet his voice trembled, for he too heard a name being spoken from beyond the light. He did not say who it was, but Myra saw the tears in his eyes. The drone drifted further into the glowing land. The figures moved closer, their features slowly sharpening. One raised a hand, waving gently as if in greeting. The settlers outside began to shout, some calling the names of their lost families. They pushed against the door, desperate to enter. Myra rushed to block them, shouting that it was not yet safe. Tomasz stepped forward, his voice firm. He told the settlers that this was only the first test and that no one should cross until the truth was known. His authority held them back for the moment, though their faces burned with desire. Myra turned back to the screen. The drone's sensors recorded energy levels unlike anything she had seen. The readings were stable, no sign of danger, no sign of heat or decay. The air beyond seemed alive, as if it carried the breath of dreams. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this be the real afterlife, waiting for humanity to step across? The blueprint had promised a bridge to something beyond, and here it was. But doubt grew within her. The voices she heard were too personal, too perfect. Could the bridge shape what people most longed for? Could it be giving each person the vision they wanted to see? She stared at the glowing frame and felt both awe and unease. The drone's signal began to fade. Static spread across the screen, and then the image was gone. The machine had passed too far into the light. Myra tried to pull it back, but the connection was lost. The settlers cried out in disappointment, yet their desire had only grown stronger. Myra stood in the middle of the workshop, her body trembling. She had proven that the golden bridge led somewhere. She had shown that voices, images, and memories could come through. But she did not yet know if it was safe or real. She looked at Tomasz, who stood silent, his eyes fixed on the glowing arc. She knew what he feared, yet she also knew what the settlers now demanded. The first test was over, and the true challenge had only begun. The golden bridge glowed in the center of the workshop, its golden shimmer filling every corner of the room. Outside, the settlers gathered day and night, waiting for another sign from the other side. They whispered to each other about the voices they had heard. Some believed their families were calling them, others swore they had seen friends long lost. The air around the settlement carried both wonder and unrest. Myra had not slept much since the first test. Each time she closed her eyes, she heard her brother's voice again, soft and warm, calling her name from across the light. She longed to believe it was truly him, waiting in that shining world. Yet her engineer's mind reminded her that illusions could be powerful. She sat at her desk, staring at the faded blueprint, asking herself if science could really reach the afterlife. Tomasz stood guard near the door, keeping watch over the growing crowd. He had lived long enough to know that hope could be as dangerous as hunger. When people believed they could be reunited with loved ones, they would risk anything. He feared what might happen if Myra lost control of the bridge. That evening, Myra decided to test the gate again. She adjusted the wires, checked the crystal engine, and brought the drone's backup systems online. This time she wanted clearer answers. She programmed the drone to carry questions written on its small display. If the voices were real, perhaps they would answer. The settlers watched as she prepared the test. When the drone lifted into the air and floated toward the golden ark, silence fell across the crowd. The light rippled as the drone passed through, and once again the screen flickered with images. The shining fields appeared, brighter than before, and the soft rivers of light stretched endlessly into the distance. Voices returned, stronger this time. They called Myra's name, and they called the names of the settlers outside. A young girl pressed her face to the window and shouted that she heard her father. An old man dropped to his knees, tears running down his cheeks, whispering the name of his wife. The sound filled the workshop like a song of longing. Myra leaned closer to the screen. The drone's display showed her questions. Who are you? Where are you? What is this place? The figures in the distance grew clearer. They looked like people, their shapes familiar, their faces gentle. One figure stepped closer to the drone. Its lips moved, and the voice came through the speakers, calm and certain. We are waiting for you. Cross the bridge. Myra's heart shook. The words were direct, as if spoken only for her. She felt a pull toward the light, stronger than before. For a moment she took a step forward, but Tomasz grabbed her arm. His voice was low and firm. He warned her not to believe too quickly. He said the bridge might be shaping her own memories, giving her what she most wanted to hear. The settlers outside began shouting. They demanded to be allowed inside. Many of them claimed the voices were calling their names as well. A woman begged Myra to open the doors so she could walk through and hold her child again. Another man shouted that the dead had been found, and humanity no longer needed to fear. The pressure grew heavier with every passing second. Myra stood torn between reason and longing. She wanted to believe in the shining land, but she also feared Tomasz might be right. The drone's signal shook with static, and the image wavered. For an instant, Myra thought she saw the field twist, the faces melting into shadows before turning bright again. Her chest tightened. Was it real, or was it only what she wished to see? Tomasz moved to the front of the workshop and raised his voice so the settlers could hear him. He told them that no one would walk through until the truth was known. He reminded them of how many false hopes humanity had chased before, each ending in sorrow. His words calmed some, but others shouted back with anger. They accused him of keeping them from their families. As the noise grew louder, Myra shut down the connection and pulled the drone back. The golden shimmer returned to silence, and the voices faded away. A heavy stillness filled the room. The settlers outside groaned with frustration, but none dared to push past Tomasz. That night Myra sat alone, her hands pressed against the table. She remembered her brother's smile, his voice, and the promise that they would meet again. She wanted to trust the bridge, but doubt gnawed at her. She wondered if the bridge created illusions shaped by memory, or if it truly reached a world beyond. Tomasz joined her, his face lined with worry. He told her that the greatest danger was not the machine itself but the hope it created. Hope could lead people forward, but it could also blind them. Myra listened, though she did not answer. Her heart was torn between science and faith, between proof and belief. As dawn touched the ruins outside, the settlers gathered once more at the workshop door. Their voices rose in unison. They demanded a chance to cross. They no longer wanted drones or tests. They wanted to step into the golden light with their own feet. Myra stood before the ark, watching its shimmer. The bridge waited, silent and alive, a path into the unknown. She knew the time was coming when no test or warning would hold the settlers back. The choice would soon be made, and it would change everything. The workshop was no longer only Myra's place of work. It had become the heart of the settlement. Each day more settlers came, standing outside in the dust, their eyes fixed on the golden light inside. They carried both hope and desperation. Some brought food to Myra as gifts, others prayed in silence, and a few argued loudly with Tomasz, who still guarded the door. Myra knew she could not keep the bridge closed forever. The settlers had seen enough to believe. They had heard voices, seen familiar faces, and felt the pull of the shining world beyond. If she kept waiting, they might break down the doors themselves. Tomasz told her that giving in to them would be dangerous, but Myra felt another truth pressing on her. The bridge had to be tested by human steps, not only by machines. That evening, under the pale light of a broken moon, Myra called the settlers inside. They entered slowly, their faces glowing in the golden shimmer. Some wept as they stood near the ark, whispering the names of their lost. Myra raised her hand and told them what she knew. The bridge was not proven safe, and she could not promise what lay on the other side. But she also said she believed it was not only a dream. She believed it was a place shaped by the strongest parts of the human heart. A silence followed her words. Then a man stepped forward. His name was Ralin, a farmer who had lost his family to the famine years ago. His eyes were tired but steady. He said that he was ready to cross, that life on earth had given him nothing more, and that if his family waited beyond the light, then he would find them. Others called out in agreement. Myra's chest tightened as she turned on the controls. The bridge flared brighter, its surface shining like a pool of sunlight. The air hummed with power. Ralin walked forward. Each step echoed in the silence, until he reached the ark. He paused only once, looking back at the settlers. His face carried no fear, only longing. Then he stepped into the light. The golden surface rippled around him. For a moment his body shimmered as if woven from fire. Then he began to walk across a bridge that none had seen before. It stretched into endless distance, made of pure light, wide and shining. The settlers gasped as they watched. Ralin did not fall or vanish. He walked with steady steps, his form glowing brighter with each pace. Soon other settlers rushed forward. A mother and her child entered the light together, their hands held tight. Their bodies also shimmered and glowed as they crossed the shining span. One by one, more followed. Some wept with joy, others laughed, and a few fell silent as they disappeared into the brightness. Myra and Tomasz stood at the edge, watching in awe. Tomasz whispered that this might be a trick, but his voice shook with doubt. Myra's eyes stayed fixed on the glowing bridge. She could not look away. She felt both fear and wonder. Then a voice came through the drone link. It was Ralin. His words were calm and strong. He said that he could see wide fields filled with light, and that his family was waiting for him. He told Myra not to fear, that the bridge was real. His voice carried a peace Myra had never heard in him before. The settlers shouted with joy, their belief now unshakable. The bridge continued to glow, and the people kept crossing. The workshop filled with golden light until it seemed more like a temple than a place of tools and wires. Myra felt tears in her eyes as she listened to the voices of those who had gone ahead. They spoke with joy, calling for others to follow. Yet even as hope filled the air, Tomasz placed his hand on Myra's arm. He asked her if she had noticed the way the light grew stronger with each crossing. He pointed out that the crystal engine pulsed faster, as if it was feeding on the people who entered. Myra froze. She had not seen it that way before. She wanted to believe the voices, but doubt gnawed at her heart once more. Still, the settlers were unstoppable now. They came forward in groups, stepping into the shimmer, walking across the endless golden path. Some turned and waved before fading into the distance. The crowd cheered each time, their cries echoing through the broken city. When at last the rush slowed, Myra shut down the controls. The light dimmed, leaving only the memory of what they had seen. Fewer people remained in the settlement now, but their faces were filled with hope instead of sorrow. They believed they had found peace at last. Myra sat alone that night, staring at the quiet ark. She replayed Rallan's voice in her mind, the sound of certainty and calm. She wanted to trust it. She wanted to believe she had built a bridge to freedom. But Tamash's warning stayed in her thoughts. If the bridge fed on energy, then what if it also fed on life itself? The great crossing had begun, and there was no turning back. The settlement had grown quiet after the great crossing. Many houses stood empty, their doors swinging in the wind, their fires cold. Those who remained spoke in hushed voices, their eyes still glowing with the memory of golden light. Some regretted not crossing. Others still feared what might truly lie beyond. Myra felt the weight of both silence and expectation pressing on her shoulders. The golden bridge stood silent in her workshop. The crystal engine no longer pulsed as brightly, but faint lines of light still ran through the frame like veins of fire. Myra sat at her desk with her notes spread around her. She read the old blueprint again and again, searching for answers hidden in the strange symbols. She wanted proof. She wanted to know if the bridge was real or if it only shaped illusions from human memory. Tamash stood near the door, watching her. He had not spoken much since the crossing. He still feared the bridge, though he could not deny what they had seen. His voice finally broke the silence. He told Myra that if she wanted truth, she needed to test the machine in a way no one had before. Not with people, not with drones, but with something that could not be fooled by memory. Myra listened and then nodded. She decided to send raw energy through the bridge instead of a machine or a person. If the bridge was only an illusion, then pure power would reveal it. If the bridge was real, then the energy would return with signs of a true world beyond. The next morning, while the settlers waited outside, Myra and Tamash began their work. She set up a set of batteries lined with wires, connecting them to the core of the bridge. Tamash helped her stabilize the engine so it would not burn out. When everything was ready, Myra pulled the main switch. The golden bridge roared to life. Light spread across the ark, brighter than ever before. The settlers gasped as the air trembled, and the walls shook with the sound of power. Myra pressed the command, sending a surge of pure energy into the shimmering surface. For a moment the light grew calm, smooth as glass. Then the vision appeared. The shining fields returned, but they did not look the same. The rivers flickered, and the sky cracked like glass. The familiar figures blurred, their faces twisting before turning clear again. The voices returned too, but they wavered, breaking apart into echoes. Myra leaned closer to the screen, her eyes wide. The bridge was struggling to hold its shape. Tamash shouted that this was the truth. He said the world beyond was not fixed but shaped by what people carried inside them. The energy had no memory, no heart, and so the illusion could not stay strong. Myra's chest tightened as she realized he was right. The bridge was not a doorway to a perfect afterlife waiting for all. It was a passage into a dimension that formed itself from human thought and belief. The settlers outside shouted in confusion. Some cried out in anger, saying Tamash was lying. Others grew afraid as they saw the sky on the screen twist like smoke. Myra raised her voice above them. She told them that the bridge was not false, but neither was it what they thought. It was not a gift from gods or spirits. It was a place born from the deepest memories and hopes of the human mind. Those who crossed would find peace if they believed in peace, but those who carried fear might find only shadows. Her words silenced the crowd. Some looked hopeful, others terrified. The truth was both brighter and darker than they had expected. Myra turned back to the bridge and shut down the flow of energy. The shimmer dimmed, leaving the room in heavy silence. Tomasz placed a hand on her shoulder. He told her that she had found the answer she had searched for. Humanity had discovered not the end of life, but a mirror of the soul. Myra nodded slowly. She felt both proud and burdened. The bridge was greater than she had dreamed, yet more dangerous than she had feared. That night she sat outside with the settlers who remained. They gathered around a fire, their faces pale in the flickering glow. Myra explained again what she had learned. She told them that the Golden Bridge was real, but it would give back only what they carried within. She warned them that crossing was a choice, not a promise. Some nodded with understanding, others lowered their heads in doubt. When the fire burned low, Myra looked up at the stars. She thought of her brother's voice calling to her. She wondered if he was truly waiting for her or if the bridge had shaped his image from her memory. She did not know, but she felt the pull of the light stronger than ever. She wanted to walk across, to see with her own eyes, even if the truth was uncertain. Tomasz sat beside her, quiet. He had no answer for her. He only said that the final choice would belong not to him, not to the settlers, but to her. The Golden Bridge had been her work, her dream, and her burden. The wind carried silence through the empty streets, and the golden frame glowed faintly in the workshop behind them, waiting for the next step. The night before the final choice, Myra did not sleep. She sat in her workshop with the Golden Bridge glowing faintly in the dark. The machine looked alive, like it was waiting for her. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the call of voices across the shimmer. She remembered her brother's laugh, her parents' gentle words, and even the faces of friends who had long passed. Each memory felt sharper, stronger, as if the bridge itself was pushing her to step through. By dawn the settlers gathered again. Their numbers had grown smaller, but those who remained carried the same look in their eyes, a mix of fear and hope. Some wanted to follow their families. Others wanted to stay and build a new future on Earth. Myra stood before them, her hands trembling, but her voice steady. She told them that the bridge was not heaven and not a trap. It was a reflection of the human heart. If they carried love, they would find peace. If they carried fear, they would face it. Tomasz stood beside her. He did not want to cross. His voice was calm but firm when he said he would remain to guide those who stayed. He believed the earth still needed them, that life should not be abandoned because of fear of death. He respected the bridge but felt it was not his path. Myra listened, and though she felt sadness, she respected his choice. The settlers began to decide. One by one they stepped forward. Some touched the golden frame, and their faces glowed with joy as they vanished into the shimmer. Others stepped back, shaking their heads, choosing to remain. There were no arguments, no anger. Each decision was accepted. The bridge had shown them enough truth that no one could judge another. When the crowd had finished, only a few stood near Myra. Tomasz was one of them, his eyes steady but gentle. He asked her if she was ready. Myra looked at the empty streets, at the broken homes, at the sky above that carried both beauty and silence. She thought of the years she had spent building the bridge. She thought of the day it first came alive, and the first time she saw her brother's face across the shimmer. Her heart told her the answer. She smiled at Tomasz and said she would go. He did not try to stop her. He only placed his hand on hers and whispered that she had done something no human had ever done. She had built a path to what lay beyond the edge of life. He promised to keep her name alive, to tell the story of her courage. The settlers who stayed stood in silence as Myra walked to the machine. She wore no fear on her face, only calm. The frame of the bridge hummed softly, like it recognized its maker. The light grew brighter as she approached, golden threads weaving together to form the shining path. For a moment, the workshop felt like a temple, filled with quiet reverence. Myra stopped at the edge of the shimmer. She turned back to Tomasz and the others. She thanked them for standing with her, for believing even when the truth was heavy. She told them not to fear what was ahead, because the bridge belonged to humanity now. With her final words spoken, she stepped forward. The light swallowed her. Warmth surrounded her body, and her breath caught as she felt herself lifted. For a moment she thought she was floating in a river of gold. The voices grew louder, but they were no longer echoes. They were clear, strong, and filled with love. She saw her brother running toward her, his face bright with joy. She felt her parents' arms around her. The world around her unfolded into endless fields, rivers shining beneath a gentle sky. Myra knew this place was shaped by her heart, but it felt real all the same. If it was a reflection, then it was one she welcomed. She laughed for the first time in many years, her voice carried across the golden horizon. She had found her answer. Back in the settlement, the bridge dimmed after her crossing. The shimmer faded until only the golden frame remained. Tomasz stood in silence, his eyes wet but steady. He whispered her name once, then turned to the settlers who stayed. He told them it was time to rebuild, to honor those who had gone by living fully on the earth that remained. Seasons passed. The settlement grew stronger. New families were formed, children born, homes rebuilt. The story of Myra and the Golden Bridge was told around fires and written in books. People came from far lands to see the frame that had once opened the path beyond. Some believed, some doubted, but all felt the weight of its presence. Tomasz grew old but never left the settlement. He kept his promise, speaking of Myra with pride. He told the young ones that humanity's strength was not only in machines but in courage, in the will to step into the unknown with hope. The Golden Bridge never lit again, yet its memory lived on. Some said it slept, waiting for another soul as brave as Myra to awaken it. Others said it had served its purpose and closed forever. Whatever the truth, humanity had been changed. They had learned that the afterlife was not a distant mystery but a reflection of their own hearts. The bridge had not given them an escape but had shown them who they were. And through Myra's choice, they discovered that courage could light the path, even into the deepest unknown.